And first, breaking just moments ago, the suspect in Trump's second assassination attempt was just officially charged with attempting to assassinate a major presidential candidate. Authorities say he scoped out Trump's golf course for 12 hours and had written about his desire to kill the former president. Ryan Wesley Ruth was initially charged with 2 federal firearm offenses. The new charges indicate the Justice Department's assessment that he methodically planned to kill the Republican nominee for president. And reversing a trend of offshoring American business. That's what former President Trump vowing to do as he laid out a plan to make factories move back to the United States. NTD's Iris Tao has more from Trump's remarks in Savannah, Georgia.
Vowing to create a new American industrialism, former President Trump on Tuesday laid out a new economic plan to incentivize companies, both American and foreign ones alike, to relocate their factories to the U.S.
And under my plan, American workers will no longer be worried about losing your jobs to foreign nations. Instead, foreign nations will be worried about losing their jobs to America. Going to bring them back.
Speaking to battleground state voters in Savannah, Georgia, Trump pitches a reward mechanism in which he promises to slash business tax
to 15%, which makes us the most competitive tax anywhere on the planet.
And cut regulations
to slash burdens on workers and businesses,
reduce energy costs, and provide federal land, but only for companies who would manufacture and hire here in the U.S.
If you don't make your product here, then you will have to pay a tariff, a very substantial tariff, when you send your product into the United States.
Such policies, Trump says, will make companies pour into the U.S. It comes as Trump is emphasizing the need to compete with China, especially in tech and manufacturing.
China is right now building major auto plants in Mexico. Did you know that? They were going to start with me. I said, no, if you do them, I'm putting a 200% tariff on every car that comes.
Meanwhile, at a Monday event, Trump threatened a 200% tariff on John Deere if the tractor giant proceeds with a plan to lay off workers in the Midwest and move some productions to Mexico.
Because it's hurting our farmers, it's hurting our manufacturing.
But the Harris campaign seizing on that to criticize Trump's tariff policies in a Tuesday press call.
If you put 200% tariffs on John Deere, the net result is that you've made it cheaper for Chinese manufacturers to compete with John Deere.
On Wednesday, Trump will travel to the battleground state of Michigan, while Harris will lay out her economic policies in Pittsburgh. Reporting by Iris Tao, NTD News.
In the Harris-Walz campaign, just speaking to the media ahead of Vice President Harris's Wednesday rally in Pittsburgh. Businessman Mark Cuban and Teamsters National Black Caucus Chair James Kerbeam explaining why they prefer Harris over Trump when it comes to the economy. NTD's Jason Blair reports.
During a call hosted by the Harris-Walz campaign on Tuesday, successful entrepreneur Mark Cuban laid out why he thinks Vice President Kamala Harris is better for business.
I want a president that thinks before he speaks or she speaks. I want a president that for business goes into details and has a policy team that understands all the ramifications of what's being proposed.
Cuban said that when he has had conversations with the Harris team, they consult their policy teams and he gets back a, quote, serious, well-studied response. He said Harris, quote, thinks through her policies. James Kerbeam, the chair of the Teamsters National Black Caucus, also expressed why he supports Harris.
Vice President Harris is the only candidate that actually grew up in the middle class, and her agenda is the only one that's focused on building the working families again.
Citing an anonymous source, CNN reported that Harris is planning to visit the U.S.-Mexico border while in Arizona on Friday.
I will bring back the border security bill that Donald Trump killed, and I will sign it into law.
If Harris does indeed go to the border on Friday, it will be her first visit since becoming the Democratic presidential nominee and the second time since becoming the vice president. Her first visit was in June of 2021. Harris also said that she supports eliminating the filibuster for Roe v. Wade. Ending the filibuster would mean 60 votes in the Senate would no longer be needed to reinstate federal legislation related to someone's ability to get an abortion. She made the comments during an interview with Wisconsin Public Radio that aired on Tuesday. Harris said, "I think we should eliminate the filibuster for Roe and get us to the point where 51 votes would be what we need to actually put back in law the protections for reproductive freedom and for the ability of every person and every woman to make decisions about their own body and not have the government tell them what to do." Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
President Biden made his final address as the United States president to the United Nations General Assembly in New York earlier today. He defended his administration's record on foreign policy while there, and NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the latest.
In his keynote address to the UN General Assembly on Tuesday in New York, President Joe Biden called for a stronger, more effective UN. He also called to expand the UN Security Council, the group's most powerful arm.
But maybe because all I've seen and all we have done together over the decades, I have hope. I know there is a way forward.
The annual meeting comes amid the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, and Biden called for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war, lamenting the deaths on both sides.
Now is the time for the parties to finalize its terms, bring the hostages home, and secure security for Israel and Gaza free of Hamas' grip.
Biden's approval ratings have suffered over the past 3 years, part of which is due to his handling of international conflicts. The withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan in 2021 was one example, which ended in the deaths of 13 American soldiers and hundreds of Afghans.
It was a hard decision, but the right decision. 4 American presidents had faced that decision, but I was determined not to leave it to the 5th. It was a decision accompanied by tragedy. I think those lost lives, I think them every day.
President Biden also mentioned how it's important not to escalate the conflict with the Chinese Communist Party, but also not being afraid to call out much of their aggressive behavior, from unfair market practices to stolen technology from the U.S.
The United States is unabashed, pushing back against unfair economic competition, against military coercion of other nations in the South China Sea, and maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Straits, and protecting our most advanced technologies so they cannot be used against us or any of our partners.
Biden also discussed how the U.S. is working with China to stop the spread of fentanyl. Now, this comes amid a report from the House Select Committee on the CCP back in April, which found that the Chinese regime is directly subsidizing the manufacture and export of fentanyl into the U.S. Right after his speech, Biden hosted a summit with world leaders to address synthetic drug threats. It's a U.S.-led initiative to mobilize support among countries to stop the spread of fentanyl, much of which stems from China.
Nearly 60,000 pounds of fentanyl have been seized. That's enough to kill every single American, many times over.
Now, this all comes a day after President Biden proposed an executive order which would ban Chinese and Russian technology in U.S. vehicles due to safety concerns, as these cars can be remotely controlled. President Biden is set to meet with the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, in Washington on Thursday. Reporting from the White House, Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Israel says that it has killed a Hezbollah commander in Lebanon today. He was allegedly responsible for terrorist attacks against civilians. Israel's strikes also damaging the homes of people living in that area. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has an update on the Middle East.
Israel says a Tuesday attack on Lebanon's capital killed Hezbollah commander Ibrahim Qubaisi. The strike also damaged buildings in the area. Israel says that Qubaisi was responsible for launching missiles towards Israel for the past years. According to the country's military, Qubaisi joined Hezbollah in the 80s and was responsible for numerous terror attacks against Israeli civilians and soldiers. Also on Tuesday in Lebanon, people attended the funerals of those killed in the airstrikes. Among the attendees was the father of a girl who died.
These children, who are birds of paradise, their souls will be the victory. These innocent ones, their souls will be the victory until we pray at Al-Aqsa.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu suggests the Lebanese people should blame Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah.
I say to the people of Lebanon, our war is not with you, our war is with Hezbollah. Nasrallah is leading you to the brink of abyss. I told you yesterday to evacuate the houses where he put a missile in the living room and a rocket in the garage. He who has a missile in his living room and a rocket in his garage will not have a home.
And the fighting also destroyed homes in northern Israel, close to the Lebanese border.
In the last few days, Hezbollah has fired hundreds of rockets towards Israel. In the last week, over 700 missiles and rockets towards Israel, creating damage to many, many houses and communities.
He added that Hezbollah initiated the war with Israel just one day after the October 7th attacks, emphasizing that Israel has been acting in self-defense ever since. Ariane Pastar, NTD News.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.